Hello children. Today we are going to do the poem Television by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl was the most popular British writer of his times. This poem Television by Dahl is a long didactic poem written in a light, humorous tone with a message that is relevant in our times. It is an earnest appeal to parents to wean their children away from watching television to reading of books. Let's go through the poem. In the beginning stanza, he says, "The most important thing we have learned so far as children are concerned is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or, better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all." Children, in the beginning line, the poet has used we instead of I to underline the fact that what he wants to say is not merely his personal opinion, rather it is the opinion of number of persons like him who are worried about the children's habit of watching the television. Then in the next lines, he has used the word never, never in capital letters to put emphasis on the message that he wants to give. He says, the most important thing we have learned, altogether have learned, is that never let your children come near the television sets. Or, what would be the better thing? Just don't install the television set. Now, instead of saying television set, he has used the word idiotic thing. Why? Because he says the television is like an idiot box. Okay, he has an aversion or hatred for television, and also he says that this television makes the viewers stupid and dull. Therefore, children should not be allowed to come near the television set and view its programs. Children, here the poet has used a rhetorical device, apostrophe, while addressing his poem to the parents, because parents are here as an absent audience. Further, he says, in almost every house we have been, we have watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place, we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. The poet gives a journal observation here. He says that it has been observed that children sit or stand. What is the journal observation? In almost every house we have found, we have watched them gaping at the screen, that they stare continuously at the television screen. They loll and slop and lounge about. They loll, they move or stand in a lazily manner. They slop, they spend time lazily. Lounge about, they sit or stand in a lazy manner. And stare until their eyes pop out. And the poet humorously says that they watch television, the children watch television until their eyes seems to come out. Last week, in someone's place, we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. The poet humorously says that a week ago, he saw a dozen eyeballs of children lying on the floor as a result of excessive TV watching. Children, here the poet has used the figure of speech, which is a metaphor, but along with it, it is a hyperbole, the exaggeration of the given description. Further, he says, they sit and sit until they are hypnotized by it, until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. Oh, yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the window sill. So, what do we see? The children, the poet gives a journal observation. He says it has been observed that the children, they sit and stare and sit. That is how they watch the television till the time they are hypnotized, they are highly influenced and controlled by the charm of the television. Until they are absolutely drunk, they are completely absorbed in what they are seeing. Oh yes, with all that shocking, ghastly junk. Ghastly is frightening, useless stuff. Ghastly junk, frightening stuff that they are watching. They are absolutely drunk with it. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the windowsill. We know, he's telling the parents that we know that it is an advantage to the parents that while children, they watch television, they do not disturb them. They do not climb out of the windows, and the television keeps them still. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? So, they never fight, nor do they indulge in fights with one another. They leave their parents free to cook the lunch. They never fight or kick or punch, and they leave you free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. And they let the parents free to cook lunch or wash utensils lying in the sink. But then he questions the parents. But did you ever stop to think? But he cautions the parents by asking whether they have stopped and considered, to wonder, to just exactly what this does to what this television watching, or what harm it does to the children when they continue to watch television for a very long time. It rots the sense in the head. He further says, it rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind, he can no longer understand a fantasy of fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees. So very beautifully, in capital letters, he has elaborated upon the harm done by television to the children's mind. He says it rots the sense in the head. It rots the sense. Rots is it spoils, it decays the sense in the head of the children. It kills the imagination in the children's mind. It clogs and clutters. It blocks the mind and fills it with useless thoughts. It makes child so dull and blind. The child becomes very dull and he cannot see. Blind to what? He is blind and he can no longer understand. What is he blind to? What can he no longer understand? The difference between the real and the fantasy. The real and a fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. Children, here the poet has used a simile. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. So brain is becoming useless now, has become useless. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. His powers of thinking, they have also become useless. He cannot think and imagine. He loses the power to think and imagine. He cannot think also. This has been confirmed by many independent researchers also. Now what does he do? He passively sees. He watches the television. Children, let's continue with line number 34. The poet further says, all right, you will cry, all right, you'll say, but if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. We'll answer this by asking you, what use the darling wants to do? How used they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? The poet is aware that parents will object to it. So he knows that parents will ask him, if the television set is removed, there will be no means left with them to entertain their children. They will like to know as to how to entertain them. The poet retorts by asking a rhetorical question as to how they used to entertain themselves as children before this monster or the television was invented. The poet has used monster as a metaphor here. At the same time, television is personified. Okay, and monster means a demon. Have you forgotten? Don't you know? We will say it very loud and slow. They used to read. They would read and read and read and read and then proceed to read some more. Great Scott, gadzooks. One half their lives was reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Books cluttered up the nursery floor. The poet perhaps is telling the parents, perhaps they have forgotten. As children, they used to read and read and read. The nursery shelves were full of books. Surprisingly, they would spend half of their lives reading books. Reading books was the only and the main source of entertainment for them in the past. Okay, here galore word. The word galore means in plenty. So they used to have plenty of books. Children, great Scott and gadzooks. These are the expression of surprise or disbelief and a kind of oath. Cluttered up means they were all crowded. Okay, the nursery shelves, or at the time of nursery, the nursery shelves were full of books. And in the bedroom by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. Such wondrous, fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens, and waves, and treasurizers and distant shores, where smugglers rode with muffled doors, and pirates wearing purple pants, and sailing ships and elephants, and cannibals crouching round the pot, stirring away at something hot. So there were books all over. In the bedroom, by the bed, more books were there waiting to be read. And what kind of books? The poet here reminds the parents that the rooms of children were full of books in the past. These books contained wonderful stories, wondrous, fine, fantastic tales, wondrous stories. About whom? About dragons, gypsies, queens, whales, treasure islands, distant shores, where smugglers, distant shores. In some of these stories, the smugglers and sea robbers used to operate in boats with covered oars, and pirates wearing purple pants. And there were the stories about the pirates, the sea robbers, wearing the purple pants. Children, here PPP is the alliteration used here by the poet. And sailing ships and elephants. There were stories about elephants and cannibals crouching round the pot. They used to sit crouching round the pot, staring away at something hot that they were preparing. It smells so good, what can it be? Good gracious, it's Penelope. The younger ones had Beatrix Potter with Mr. Todd the Dirty Rotter and the Squirrel Nut Kid Piggy Bland and Mrs. Tiggywinkle and just how the camel got his hump and how the monkey lost his rump and Mr. Toad and bless my soul, there's Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole. So the cannibals used to eat a very sweet smelling dish named after Penelope. Who was Penelope? The faithful wife of Odysseus in the epic poem written by Homer, the Odyssey. The children who read about it wondered what the dish could be. Small children were fond of stories of the famous English writer Beatrix Potter. The stories were about what? About Mr. Todd and his dirty dog, the squirrel Nutkin, the small pig named Bland, or about Mrs. Tiggywinkle. These stories were fascinating. They were about camels getting the hump on his back, or about the monkey losing the rear part of his hairy body. There was a story about Mr. Toad, Mr. Rat, and Mr. Mole. Oh, books, what books they used to know. Those children living long ago. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your television set away, and in its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. Then fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks. So the poet exclaims that, oh books, they used to know. The earlier children, those children living long ago, they used to know about lots of books. They used to read a lots of books. Therefore, he pleads to the parents to throw away the television set and in its place on the wall install a bookshelf and fill it with books. Children would do what? Children would protest. They would be angry, ignoring all the dirty looks, but the parents should fill the shelves with the lots of books. Ignoring all the dirty looks, the screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks, fear not, because we promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they will now begin to feel the need of having something to read. So what the children will do? Children would protest, they would be angry, could make dirty and angry faces, could cry loudly, might even bite, kick, hit the elders with sticks. Parents should ignore their reactions for their ultimate benefit. The poet further persuades parents to remove the television set without any fear. He assures them that their children, having nothing to do, would begin to feel the need. They will now begin to feel the need of what? Of having something to read. And once they start, oh boy, with the sign of exclamation, he says, what wonderful thing it would be. Oh boy. You watch the slowly growing joy. The joy they will start having. They begin to feel happy while reading the books. That fills their heart. The growing joy that will start filling their hearts. They will grow so keen, they will wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine. So he says once they began to read, they would take to reading voraciously and even begin to wonder why they used to watch these stupid machines. Stupid machine is again, ridiculous machine is television. That nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. And he is mentioning television as, he said they would find the television set as nauseating, foul and repulsive. Nauseating is disgusting and repulsive is hateful, ridiculous, foolish. So these are the names given to the television. Repulsive television screen, and later each and every kid will love you more for what you did. And later these children, they would love their parents for replacing the television set with the books. Okay, so this completes the poem, children, and therefore you can go through the poem, read it properly and solve the extract answer given in the workbook. Thank you, children.